I'm going to start recording first. This is the first official Whiskey with Rye Twitch stream, which is weird.
What's really weird is I'm watching the stream and just watching both of us being incredibly delayed.
Yeah,
on this weird screen. But yeah, other than that, it's fine.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out the gap between streaming it on Twitch and putting it on YouTube.
It's a week.
Okay, that's good. I can work with that. Yeah, let me pull up my notes and we'll wait for people to come in. But yeah, apparently, I thought it was Twitch letting me know I was live. It was not.
Well, I knew you were live because I could see myself.
Yes.
Twitch now confirms you are also live.
Okay, that's good. How does the Whiskey with Rye logo look?
Yeah, it looks okay.
Okay, that's good. I need to keep my mouse off the Discord screen. This is where I get people forgetting that it's like a display capture, not like a pure thing.
Yeah.
But I forgot how good this is, the Rest 12. And B, how simple Irish whiskey is compared to a lot of the other things that I drink.
I honestly feel that's what I like about it most.
Yeah.
It's a simple whiskey with some flavors in it. And it's got that kind of smoothness, which you don't get with a lot of them.
Right. Yeah.
Which I really like. Because I had some of that Ardbeg, which is really nice.
Yeah.
But it is not a smooth whiskey, right? It is not smooth. It's a really nice drink. But yeah, this is different. It goes down probably a little bit too easy.
Yeah. I mean,
probably hence all the fighting. I don't know.
Let's see. What does the bag come in at? Can I see it from here? Hold on. Things just... Yeah. I am wearing pants. Everyone will be happy to know. Yeah, the Ardbeg comes in at like 109 proof. Yep. Whereas this is what, 80? Yeah. So yeah, but I feel like, to me, Irish whiskey is very similar to Speyside scotches. So
yeah, I can see that. Yeah,
and I enjoy the Speyside, I think, more than the Irish, but
probably the same. Yeah, if we compare them to the Irish, but. The other thing I really like about the Irish whiskies is that so far they haven't gone hideously expensive.
Yes.
I'm sure it's going to happen, but so far.
Yeah, I mean that also depends on the Irish. Hey Knight, hey Podman, how's it going? Let me see. I can now look it up because there's a store that has an app that delivers to me now.
Oh, that's dangerous.
It is extremely dangerous. So this bottle is $72.
What's that? It's about
60 pounds,
roughly. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm not living in the 1980s anymore. Yeah, thank
goodness.
Seems a lot more than when you got it from me, I think.
Jeez, I almost knocked that over. I mean, I can check. I mean, it may be with the tariffs.
Oh, that's true. Yes. Yep.
It may be more expensive on my end now. I will have you know, I paid for Amazon UK Prime twice. Apparently, you can get this for 44 pounds.
Yeah, that sounds more like it. Yeah.
This is bullshit.
Because I think I saw this in one of my local places a couple of weeks ago for about 35.
Oh wow. Okay.
Um,
Well, it's because we get 50 extra mils.
Oh, that's also true. Yes, you alcoholic Americans, and you 50 extra milliliters.
We have to have it American sized. God damn it. So
I don't know if this is going to be the right way, Nate.
Yeah, it is for me at least. Single pot still. So in this kind of not kind of, but does tie into kind of, I just use kind of a lot there. This ties into the first question that I wanted to talk about, which is what ABV/proof do you enjoy the most? So I'm kind of ranking it like low, we'll say 80 to 99, basically. Anything below 100 proof, 100 to 110, and then 110 and above. So this comes in at 80.
Yeah. I need to remember the math. I think I just half it, right?
You have proof for ABV. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the floor for whiskey is 40% alcohol, 80 proof. That's the minimum it can be. So there is also a cask strength version of this, which is a lot more expensive here. I think it's over $100, if I remember right, or close to. But for me personally, I enjoy the higher proof. I feel like you get more character out of a higher proof, depending on the whiskey. But
I think it depends, because a lot of times the alcohol can overtake everything else, and all you taste is booze,
right?
Which is fine if that's what you want. But so a lot of the kind of less alcoholic ones can really let those tastes shine through. Whereas, of course, a well mixed one will do exactly both.
Right. Yeah. For me personally, like if it's just a straight straight bourbon, straight whiskey of some sort, I find between 100 and 110 is the sweet spot for me, where it's not too basic, but it's not just kick your ass to kick your ass. Like it actually has flavor and character and nuance, as douchey as that sounds. But I think it also just really depends on the style. Like American bourbon below 100 proof doesn't have the character that Scotch and Irish has below 100 proof.
Right.
Bottled and bond or better, 100 proof or better. Yeah. Yeah. So like for me, I prefer a little higher proof, but I also want to be able to enjoy more than one. Like if I'm just having, a couple neat pours or something like that, I want to not kill myself with like 128 proof, as well as be able to switch to something else and still taste that other thing.
Yeah, I mean, because I think I'm beyond the point. And again, I think the American movies tell me this happens. I don't know if this is true, but in bars, you seem to get a whiskey shot and then drink a beer, right? Because your beers are basically tap water and you need some alcohol to go with it. Whereas over here, we put alcohol in our beers.
Ciders.
It's such a weird idea. And I think that comes down to because I haven't done a shot of whiskey for years in that kind of normal. There's a shot, I'm going to down it kind of approach to whiskey drinking. Right? I haven't done that for a long, long time. So I tend to go for sippers now more than anything else. So I am looking, the old days, it was the better the alcohol, the better, because I'm just going to down it and not taste it. And I just want to get annihilated. Whereas, now that's not true. I am looking for more flavor. The cheaper, the better. But yeah, I don't know. Because like I say, like some higher proof ones, they just lose all nuance and taste. It's just booze, and you can spend a lot of money for something that just tastes like ethanol. Whereas some of the cheaper, less alcohol ones just have a lot of character to them.
Yeah, and like the Boilermaker is what it's normally referred to, the shot of whiskey in a beer. Like normally that's going to be your like it is just an extra assistance to get shit faced. You're drinking shitty beer. You're normally chugging shitty beer, and you're chugging shitty whiskey. In my opinion, shitty whiskey. But yeah, I mean, until my trip, I hadn't done shots of whiskey out either, and then I was doing shots of Johnny Walker. But yeah, and I think that what you were saying about like high proof, just losing everything except the ethanol, also kind of carries over into the question of like, okay, what age is kind of the sweet spot, like for me? And I find that especially with American whiskey, because specifically bourbon, where it has to be in that new oak barrel, like it can't have had any other whiskey in it before. The longer it ages, the more it just becomes wood water with ethanol. And so like the pursuit of like these 23-year-old whiskeys, the IW Harper 15, which was last week's whiskey with rye. Really at that point, all I was getting was wood. Like there wasn't the caramel sweetness, fruit, those kind of notes that you can get in American bourbon. That was all just covered up by, we want to sell you a 15-year-old bottle because we could charge more because it has a 15-year-old age statement on it.
And people, because they are chasing the more Scotch market. Like, let's be honest, there is a lot of pretension in the whiskey / Scotch market, right? There is. Do you think bourbon is just because, especially over here, bourbon is just it's the cheap drink. That's all bourbon really is. It's high alcohol and it's fairly drinkable. We don't really drink it over here for like nuance, flavor, that kind of stuff. And I'm personally not a huge fan of bourbons as a whole. Whereas whiskeys, I mean, obviously not all, but most whiskeys I normally enjoy to a certain degree. Because it's not just that really strong alcohol taste, which I think must come from the corn. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know what it is that brings that I just pick up, which is odd to me. But do you think it's that they're going after the bourbon market? The whiskey age market?
I think that part of it is they want to try and convert the Scotch drinkers, where you can get a age statement 12-year-old bottle of Scotch here in the States for $50. That Glenfiddich 12 right there is about $50. A 12-year-old bourbon is going to be 75 plus normally. So I think.
Wow, I assumed it would be cheaper.
From my experience, if it's age stated, especially bourbon, it is normally more expensive. So like the typical bottle of bourbon that's sold, I would say is between 2 to 5 years old. Whereas your typical bottle of Scotch that you're buying is like 10 to 12. And part of that is because of the new barrel. It doesn't. The wood impacts the flavor faster. Part of that, I think, is the alcohol is the corn. Also, it's just the American style normally to have a higher, like they don't put it down as much as Scotch. I think that kind of has roots in like the frontier days, like the original origin of American whiskey. Get shit faced and make it through the day, sifting for gold. Hashtag corn. Whereas with the with the Scotch, it is more nuanced because barley is more nuanced and delicate.
Yeah.
So I think
the other thing is though, like I don't think I've ever tasted a unaged Scotch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's quite possible that Scotch straight out of the distilling machine is a lot nicer than the aged stuff we get. It's not likely, but it's possible, right?
It's not going to be. I can tell you 100%. Having tasted new make, no. I mean, it's different. It's unique.
Yeah.
But I think you would find that the Scotch distillate right off the still is going to be funky as fuck.
Oh yeah.
And that because of on the barley, and then once you put it in the barrel, it rounds out the funk, it softens it, and allows it to be more nuanced. And I think barley has the ability to be more nuanced, whereas the corn just doesn't, and rye doesn't. And that's why the third grain in whiskey, in bourbon, 9 times out of 10 is going to be barley.
Yep.
Just to soften it, round it out, sweeten it up a little bit. Not that the corn doesn't sweeten it a lot, or wheat if they use wheat, but yeah. But it's also why I have gravitated more towards the rye whiskeys, like the Bullet Rye that you and I did. I like the spiciness. I like the sharpness, but not in like alcohol way.
Yeah.
And then I've really been enjoying a lot of Scotches, just the smooth, simpler, but so characteristic qualities from Scotch.
Yeah.
And hi, Rogu, if I didn't say hi, Rogu. You feel White Dog Scotch would be close to cheap vodka? I don't know that. I don't think I would go that far, because I think it would still have, it wouldn't be a neutral spirit. Whereas the vodka is typically a neutral spirit.
Yeah,
off the still.
I don't think I've ever tasted Scotch that hasn't been in a barrel. Trying to think back. Maybe I have. I don't think so. I know I've tasted some that have been dipped, like partway through aging, and the taste is vastly different.
Yeah.
So I can understand, that it does progress. But it's interesting with bourbon, and it'd be interesting to see what other people think about this as well. Like, is there a sweet spot for aging bourbon, and is the industry just pushing past that purely to make more money? Hashtag NFTs.
Fucking makers, Mark. They're goddamn NFTs. I personally, I think the answer is yes. There is a sweet spot, but also they know that people will pay a premium for an old age statement whiskey. Like,
yes,
especially
this comes down to collectors, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, take yourself as a very small example. You buy a lot of bottles,
mm-hmm.
and you show them off, right? Because that's part of the thing, right? That's part of the whole hobby, if you like.
Yeah.
So when you're chasing and again, hashtag NFTs, when you're chasing collectors, the more exclusive an item is, obviously the more you've aged it, the longer it stayed in your cellar, the less there is of it.
Right.
You are making a expensive market of something that isn't necessarily a good product.
Right. Yeah, and I think that I am, at least personally, I like to think that I am a unique collector, and the fact that I open the bottles.
Yes.
Because I got, so how a few distilleries of bourbon here in the States work is they create a false scarcity and allocate whiskey. Like, they will only send places a certain amount of bottles.
Yeah.
And so it happens once a year. Everyone knows the season. Everyone goes fucking ape shit trying to find it. Hopefully this is far enough into the video where, well, it's not monetized. It doesn't matter. Everyone hunts for it. Everyone looks for it. And those are the bottles they want. And so I was lucky enough to, like, pre-COVID, go into my favorite liquor store, go in. I bought all the staff lunch. I just gave the guy that runs the place some cash, said, hey, just get everyone some lunch on me. Y'all taken care of. You have a butcher shop. You got a pizzeria. Always stocked, always ready. Little did I know COVID was right around the damn corner. And they managed to do it during then too. But so, I'm checking out and he comes up and he asks the cashier, Miss Rachel, who always knows it's me when I say Miss Rachel. He goes, oh, what is he getting? And she goes, he's getting some cask strength whiskey. He goes, hold on, I think I have some other cask strength whiskeys in the back. So he comes back out and he has this box. And these allocated bottles are wrapped in tissue paper.
Yep.
It's the signature mark. And I just see the tissue paper sticking out of the top. These are bottles I never in my life thought I'd had the opportunity to purchase. So he sets it down. He opens it up. It's George T. Stagg is the bottle. And next to it is Stagg Jr., both of which are highly sought after, highly allocated. You were there, Podman. Highly allocated, sought after, desirable bottles. Yep. He charged me it wasn't state minimum, but it was close. And I walked out with those bottles. At home, was with Podman. The very next day, we cracked that bottle open.
Yep.
Other people would have flipped it or just sat on it saying, look at what I have. And I cracked both open, right? And it's so weird to me for whiskey. Pretty sure you did too. Hey, Serenity, that was it was so weird. It's so weird for me for whiskey to be treated like fine art as opposed to a beverage. I think is where it's at for a lot of people.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's like the collector trainer / sneaker market. Like someone will buy some Air Jordans and keep them in a box because they can flip them in 5 years rather than just wear them. Although if you've bought 100, 200, 300 pound pair of trainers, I also wouldn't wear them, but I also wouldn't buy it in the fucking first place.
Right. Yeah. Keep them so long, the insoles and the soles of the shoes deteriorate because they're foam and break apart, and then you're out the money anyway. But it's so weird for me to see the people. There's a market out there for those empty bottles.
Yeah.
So you could sell those empty bottles and tubes and boxes, and like if you paid close to what you should pay, like what you should pay for it, you can almost make your money back. Just empty bottle and tube, because it is a giant counterfeit market now.
Yeah.
And the secondary and tertiary markets where people will get these bottles, and then Facebook groups dedicated to this of, all right, tell me what you give me for it. Like there was a guy back when I was active in one of these bourbon groups. He was selling a bottle of gold, which I got in New Zealand and brought home for about $100 to $125. So he was selling it, and I reached out because I was out of it and I really enjoy it. And Oh yeah, you know, what do you want for it? It's like $275. See ya. Never mind. I'm
Yeah.
good. I'm good.
Yeah.
And like that's the spoiler alert. That's what happened with the whiskey, today's whiskey with rye. The Sazerac rye.
Yep.
There, bottle shop wanted $90 for it. It's a $25 bottle of whiskey.
Yeah.
There's no way in hell. No way. And then I check the store that had app, and they had some in. They would deliver it, and it was state minimum because that's all they sell at.
Nice.
Yeah. So lucky to have just come across it and have it delivered in 2 hours for $30 out the door with delivery.
Oh, really nice. Yeah.
So
delivery of anything in 2 hours. What the hell's that about?
I mean, won't brag about that too much.
Oh dear.
So, all right. So we talked about ABV proof. We've talked a bit about origin and everything like that. Allocation is the devil. It is. Emerging countries or states to watch for whiskey. So for me, international, I think Thailand, surprisingly, or Taiwan is what I'm thinking of. Taiwan and India are gonna. I think India is about to have bigger presence.
India has some very interesting quote unquote whiskeys.
Yes. Yes.
I would definitely say that, and I think there will be a market for them coming soon. Taiwan, I don't think I've ever tried any from there. But yeah.
And then the other interesting thing is, so I think I've talked about this a little bit on Whiskey with Rye, but sourcing whiskey, a lot of distilleries, especially starting out, they'll buy whiskey from a place called Midwest Grain Products in Indiana. They'll distill it, and MGP will either age it or just ship it as soon as it's made, and the distillery will age it, bottle it as their own, and sell it. Because of the press that MGP has in Indiana, there are actually a lot more distilleries in Indiana that are popping up and doing really nice stuff. And also, MGP is now doing their own labels of whiskey as opposed to just making it for other people. Nice. So I think Indiana is going to have a presence. I also think finally California is going to start having some really nice whiskey, and they are going to do some interesting wine finished, like wine cask finished whiskeys as well.
Finished Scotch is it can be really good.
Yeah. So if so the Redbreast 12 is actually a sherry cask finish.
Yep.
It as long as it's good wine or it's decent wine, which there are debates about whether California wine is that or not.
No comment.
And this is why you're French.
To be honest, California wine is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think they make the best reds, if I'm going to be 100% honest. But other than that, it's fine. It's nice.
Yeah. I just wish they didn't charge what they did because they think too highly of themselves. Taiwan, do they outsource that to MGP? No. But they, I think they're going to have some really nice wine finished whiskeys coming out soon. So those are kind of my two to keep an eye on for. I know obviously it's Scotland and Ireland. Like, are there big English whiskey makers, or do they really just use?
I honestly cannot think of a single English whiskey, and I'm actually wondering what they would call it. I'm going through the shelf in my local liquor store. Trying to think. Like you got it's mostly Scotches. Then you got your Irish. Then you got your Japanese. A lot of Japanese stuff coming in now.
Oh, are you guys able to get Japanese whiskey?
We've got there's suddenly a flood of Japanese whiskey on the island.
There's a lot of good,
and it's cheap and it's drinkable.
Don't tell me that.
It's destructively drinkable.
we started to get more in, and actually, it's funny you mentioned New Zealand, Dev, but New Zealand just passed a bunch of whiskey clarity laws around what makes a New Zealand whiskey a New Zealand whiskey. So I think that is about to ramp up as well, and I will be
go for their own market,
right? And I will be very jealous when you get those before I can. But
well, I mean, as we should, we are part of the Commonwealth.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. Yes.
Just go up to Canada and get it. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
I don't know what the imports are like, but
yeah, I don't either. But yeah, ooh, that was a good one. But I think New Zealand's going to pop onto the scene too soon. But I'd be curious, like, not to sound crass, but like if English whiskey makers even try just with the easily accessible Scotch market. I
honestly can't think of it because normally you would, if you wanted to spend money and have a nice drink, you would go Scotch. And if you wanted a cheap whiskey, you would go Irish. And if you just wanted something to get drunk or put in a Coke, you would get Jack Daniels. Like that was the basic rule. There are some weird French quote unquote whiskeys.
Really?
They don't do it well.
No, that does not surprise me.
They don't understand it. They get wine. I don't think they understand whiskey. At
least making it.
I don't think I've ever seen an English whiskey. I feel like I have to Google this now.
Yeah. I will say, though, my favorite whiskey bar ever, and I will say ever, is in Paris.
Yep.
And
there's some Cotswold single malt.
Is that like just from cheese?
Some from the lakes. Oh, there are quite a few, actually.
Okay.
I feel like I'm going to have to try and pick one up.
Any name brands that are like any like names that are familiar at all, or just?
Nope. Okay. The English seems to be quite a big one.
The English whiskey, okay.
The English Whiskey Co. Yeah.
Okay. That may actually that may be a blending house.
It wouldn't surprise me
if it's what I'm thinking of.
And yeah, Cotswolds seem to do quite a lot of sherry cask stuff.
Okay.
Sherry cask matured English single malt. So yes, English whiskey is a thing.
Okay.
That is expensive. I will not be trying to find that.
That's one of those things you try in a bar. Like before I invest in a bottle, let me just make sure that this is actually good. Yeah. That's kind of my default answer for anyone that is like, oh, I want to try. What do you recommend? I recommend you go to a bar. These are what I recommend from the flavors that you have told me that you like, and order it and try it that way before you spend money on a bottle, even if it's like a cheap fucking bottle.
100%. It's a commitment to get through a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah, I mean, a commitment just to check out a bottle of whiskey, like pay for it. Yeah. But yeah, and then let's see, what other questions are there? Mash bills, we talked about. I mean, you prefer the 100% barley, and I like barley and high rye. Hey, how's it going? You would not get Pappy at a bar? I have gotten Pappy Van Winkle at a hotel bar. In Kentucky, of course. They had a beer on draft that I can't get here, at home, and they had the younger Pappy Van Winkle. And I got a pint and a shot, and I took it back up to my hotel room. Ms. Rydog was there, and she goes, "What did you buy?" I said, "I bought a beer and some whiskey." She goes, "See that? What did you buy?" I was like, "It's only the 15-year-old. It's not the 23. It's fine." She's like, "Okay, that's fine then." But I mean, like, the 15 was still like 25 to 30 for the ounce and a half.
Yeah.
And the 23 is normal 50. I think at that time is like 50 to 75, like in that range. Depending on where you go now, it's over $100.
Yeah.
Which is for an ounce and a half. I'm like, there's no way in hell.
Yeah.
No way in hell.
It's crazy.
Like, my brother's first is coming up in a month, and we are taking him to a nice whiskey bar. We're not taking him to the typical, "Hey, you're 21, let's get up" bar. Like, I was like, "You are driving here yourself, so you're not fucked up before you get here, and you are driving home first thing in the morning because I leave for Kentucky first thing in the morning, and I want to go back to this bar. You will not get shit-faced at this bar. That is not going to happen." But like, they will typically have the Pappy Van Winkle, the Buffalo Trace Antique is the allocated whiskeys that I was talking about earlier. They will have these, but like, even for his birthday, that's not where I would start to try and help him find what he's looking for and enjoy it. But yeah, it's just, I am personally waiting for the whiskey bubble to fix the prices on whiskey. Start with Jim Beam White Label? No, Podman. No, I want to enjoy whiskey. It'll be Jack Daniels. Like, I keep trying to guess what the next spirit bubble will be. I keep thinking it could be gin. I think it'll be something to do with gin. We've done the vodka thing, but
that'd be interesting because gin is kind of going off the boil over here. Like, gin has been our big booze for the past 4 or 5 years. But it's starting to go off the boil, thank God, because I hate gin. Not a fan of gin, and we're wondering what's going to come. A lot of people thought it was going to be vodka, but that's probably not going to happen now.
Can't imagine why.
I don't know. I'm just hoping it's not tequila because I can't go back down that road.
No, no, that is a bad road.
Oh dear.
Slow and virgin. Yeah, it's interesting to me how different it is, like, between here and there.
Yeah.
To be gin currently there, and here I feel like it is still really whiskey, but I do think starting to transition, especially with the celebrity brands, into tequila and mezcal here as well. I think that may actually be what ends up next. It's always interesting to see, and like, there are a lot of craft distillers doing whiskey. Not to wish ill on them. A lot of them I would be okay with not doing it anymore, because it just feels rushed and really like they put it out too young, and like, you can just taste how young it is.
Yeah, but then that you have to if you're doing a small craft thing, right? It's hard to like sit on your first wave of product for say 10 years. You know what I mean? That's a huge investment you're going to put in.
It is, and I agree with that. And I also, depending on your climate, I don't think you have to wait 10 years. Yeah, but you shouldn't be releasing it at 6 months. Because
not unless you're doing something to it to make it taste nice at 6 months.
They're not.
Which is perfectly possible, but if you're not, then you're just making a bad whiskey.
Yeah, exactly. No, they are. they're labeling themselves as whiskey distilleries. And I think that's the challenge that they run into is they shoehorn themselves. Like if you're starting a small craft distillery like that, I think you have to do different styles of spirits. And to me, and this is if I ever get a distillery ever in my life, this is kind of my brand, is you do your clear spirits while you age your whiskey. Float off the clear spirits, you do your vodkas, you do your gin, and you do them relatively well. I mean, they don't have to be great because people will just buy it because it's craft, because that's just how the world works. And it's local, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I think if you are looking for the crowd that will sustain you, you can't release a 6-month-old whiskey. You can't release a 1-year-old whiskey, especially around here because of our climate. Like, Kentucky is really good because they have that wide swing in temperatures. Texas can release young whiskey because they get so hot and they have those really cold nights. So you're getting more movement through the wood in and out of the barrel. But like here around me, that doesn't happen. We don't get that. We just get cold. And so it just sits in a barrel. And I think a lot of the distilleries have released too young a whiskey. And then I just never want to go back to them to try it again.
Which I think is fair enough. Like, I think if I was going to do it and I knew I had to try and build up a clientele, I would try and make a huge batch of whiskey in the hope that after a number of years it tastes good, and sell small taster bottles, like open barrels up at different times. Because then what you can then prove to people is actually, yes, it did improve over time. And you're making a little bit of money to keep yourself afloat, and then you hope, fingers crossed, when you do your big barrel and you do your big bottles, it actually tastes good.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. And I think that is a real investment opportunity as well. Like one of the local distilleries, from launch, they did a single barrel program where you could go in, buy a barrel, pick 4 from 4 different mash bills. They will distill it, they'll barrel it, they'll age it, and then you go in every so often and you say it's ready because it's yours. Yeah. And then you buy all the bottles through the state system, which is shit. But, it's a similar idea. Like you can see the progression in it, and go from there. 50-gallon barrels need 2 years to get the same profile as a standard barrel at 5+. That's what they say. I don't believe that. I think smaller barrels over wood in flavor faster. But it's not a comparable taste to me. Peerless does something like that. Yes, they do. I remember that was a weird tour that we did. Rocktown did that.
That is interesting to me. Like being able to follow a Scotch or any kind of drink really as it progresses is like, it's a really interesting idea. And I think if you could work, like if you could become like a drink of the month club, and you're working with 12 different distilleries who are each making their own drink of some sort and aging it, and you're able to send them out as the year goes on. I don't think that's a bad business model, because you're going to keep on buying it even if it tastes shit for those first 5 years, because you're invested. You're like, is this going to get better? And even if it doesn't, you're still going to end up with a big bottle at the end to put on your shelf.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and it's interesting to me too, like the number of like distillery experiences that are popping up now, where like they will let you blend your own bottle.
Yeah.
So like you'll go in, they will give you like 10 different samples. You taste each sample individually, and then you mess around with proportions. And when you find the one you like, they take that and then they match the percentages into a bottle for you.
Yeah.
That is a really great way to extend your barrels.
Yep.
As well as initiate people to a lot of the different styles of whiskey.
It is, and you know, you've got the tour involved in that as well. And then you hope that because they have a good experience, they will say to their friends, "You should go do this experience." Like it's another good business revenue model, but it's a really nice idea. And I think that's the you know, when you're a small business, those are what you need. You need those kind of separate lines of income, which is why, yeah, you know, you do your gins first because they're quick to make. You know, you do your vodkas because they're insanely quick to make,
and easy and cheap.
Yeah.
Like corn is cheap here in the States.
Yes, yeah.
Like fucking corn vodka, or you know, a rye vodka, or like you know, something, or rice or whatever, like any grain like that, and just like a cheap, fast vodka.
Yeah,
you know, it will kind of print money for you to sustain you until what you really want to do is available.
Yeah. But no, that is interesting. Like, you know, how if you just want to make whiskey, you know, and I think we're all coming to the conclusion that you do need to age it a certain amount of time before it's even drinkable. How do you make money out of that by just doing that? Like, it's an interesting question.
Yeah, well, and then that's where sourcing comes in. And that's a tricky thing too. Like, yes, it is the same mash bill, but if I'm buying that mash bill from MVP and they're making it for me on their equipment, that doesn't mean it will be the exact same when I make it on my equipment.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you switch over, how does it compare? And that's a unique challenge because like Bullet actually did that themselves. They didn't use the word sourcing. They were contract distilling. So basically they went to MGP, used MGP's equipment, distilled, barreled. They may have aged it at their distillery, and then they bottled it under their label. Well, they just switched the bourbon over to being at their distillery on their own equipment.
Yeah.
But they still source Bullet Rye from MGP. And so it's a transparency issue as well, which is like, I don't care if you source. If you want to source, more power to you. That's awesome. Like, glad you can do it. It's consistent. Like, you know what you're going to get. And if something fucks up, it's someone else's problem, really, because they fucked it up. It's not you losing everything. Just tell me that's what you're doing. Like one of the IW Harper, it's a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, distilled in Tennessee, bottled in Tennessee. I think it may even be. No, I think it's distilled in Tennessee as well. But like, it's label shit like that drives me nuts. There's not enough transparency, and that's what happened in Japan. Like when the Japanese about it must be almost 10 years ago now, a Japanese whiskey was named Whiskey of the Year, and people were like, "Shit, Japan's making whiskey. Let's get in there and buy it." And like it's just they sold it all, and then they sold everything they had in the warehouse because people wanted more. Like, fuck, we can still make money. Where do we get our whiskey? And so it stopped being Japanese whiskey and started being what can we get our hands on and bottling and say is Japanese whiskey. And so they also, mid last year, passed a bunch of Japanese whiskey laws finally to be like, if it says Japanese whiskey, it has to be Japanese. It's good to have clarity like that. And like you were saying with India, they don't have they kind of play fast and loose with the term whiskey.
They do. I've seen. But India, I think, not just whiskey, I think India is one of those countries that's going to start to have a fairly huge impact on global supply chains anyway. And not just as a kind of outsourcing partner, but as this is Indian. And their take on alcohol is kind of strange.
Mm-hmm.
But Yeah, I can see them making a nice whiskey.
Yeah, I
They
mean,
can. I know it's
it's always interesting when you see the
I just
like
dropped
top.
some bloody whiskey.
It's always interesting when you see like top selling whiskeys in the world, because like
Yep.
the top 5 are in whiskeys, and you're like, I've never fucking heard of these, but they have population to
Yeah.
buy it all, to produce and consume it, and then there are like whiskeys you've heard of. Um, that's a fun beer thing. You've had collabs that where the same be made and canned by different breweries. You can see the difference. Yeah, exactly. Um, but you know, like when that happens in whiskey, where it's still the same label, and so you're expecting, you know, the same thing. That's where like flavor drift, and you know, it's why a lot of the brands are blends. Like it's not a single barrel bourbon; it's a blend. Like Maker's Mark and Jim Beam and Jack Daniels and Basil Hayden and all these things are blended for flavor consistency. They want it all within a percentage to be able to put out, so you know what you're getting. When I buy Maker's Mark, it's this, and I know what's going to be, and it's going to be that every time.
Yeah.
For better or worse, depending on your opinion of it. But, you know, like it's also why it's fun and go to single barrel or cask strength versions of those whiskeys to see what else there is to it that's kind of hiding in there a bit.
Yeah.
Let's see. I think the last question that I have brought up were best low budget, mid range, and top shelf whiskeys to take to a gathering. So I think for me, the best low budget is going to be the Evan Williams bottled and bond bourbon. It's like you can get a 1.75 liter bottle for under 30. And it's perfectly okay. Like it will, you can sip it. Exactly, Pop. You can sip it. You can mix it. You can do whatever you want with it. Mid range. Lately, I would go either Basil Hayden or one of the Old Forester like 1910, 1920 bottles. About 50 to 60 bucks.
Yep.
Again, we'll do whatever you want it to do. You feel bad when someone pours it in Coke. At least I don't. You know, or make a lot of it. And then top shelf. I mean, I think top shelf, I would go not 18, Oban 18. Excuse me, but like an Oban 14, Lefroy, Lagavulin 16, where it's under 100 still, but it's a really nice bottle.
Lagavulin is definitely the nicest whiskey I've had. Outside of a very expensive Japanese whiskey whose name I can't remember, which was gorgeous.
Was it Becky Harmony?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you, but it was such a nice drink. But yeah, like Lagavulin. Cheap for me is Teachers.
Okay.
You can get that for like 15 quid a bottle. And it's nice, neat, it's better mixed. Mid shelf, I would struggle because there are quite a few that I like, but I'd probably go blended rather than single malt. One, because I think a lot of people can find it easier to drink blended than single malt. Just because they don't tend to have that very kind of, I don't know what you call it, very strong Scotch flavor, especially when you get to the peaty ones.
Yeah.
but blendeds tend to be a little bit smoother going down, rather than burny, I guess is the kind of best way of putting it.
Yeah.
But yeah, Lagavulin is, and I've had a few of their more expensive bottles, and they're good.
Yeah.
They're consistent, which is kind of strange, honestly. when you so because a friend of mine has a huge whiskey collection, and I go down to their house fairly often so I can partake.
As you should.
But some of the, and again I can't remember the name, some of the more expensive bottles he's had, like even the same kind of age, are wildly different from bottle to bottle. Whereas Lagavulin have always been fairly consistent, which is it's quite nice in a way, but another part of it, because it's the gamble, especially when you buy an expensive bottle, you want to know you're buying something you're going to like.
Yeah.
And when they change bottle, and they can change bottle to bottle, it's very hard to take that gamble.
Yeah.
Which is why I never collect wine.
Yes. I'm having a hard time thinking of a high-end bourbon that I would take. Mostly because if it's high-end bourbon, you can't fucking find it. I think something like Elijah Craig Barrel Proof, I think, is a high-end bourbon that is fun to experience, especially because regular Elijah Craig is like $30. So you could take them both and experience, like a side by side is fun with that. Like we did with the Stag Junior and the George T. Stag. Like, it's fun to compare the two side by side. Like, it's a grown up version of this, and like comparing them and seeing that. But yeah, I also have you had experience with Compass Box whiskey?
No.
So they're headquartered in London. They're really out of Scotland. And what they are is really a blending house. Yeah. And so they do a lot of unique, different, actually, spoiler alert, that's going to be the next video. Next week will be a Compass Box whiskey, the Spice Tree. So they just do...
Not a lie. Yes, I've drunk the Spice Tree.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the one... It's something to do with France.
Spain?
I think it was France, wasn't it?
I think it's Spanish or Portuguese.
I thought it was finished in French casks, but maybe
Hold
I'm
on.
wrong.
I'll grab it. Hold on.
I'm going back to a bottle I read many years ago. Well, probably about a few months ago.
No, you're right on that one. I was thinking of a different one. It is custom made French oak heads on the American oak bodies of the whiskey.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. To that one.
Yeah. So this is the first one that I bought. I actually, the whiskey bar in Paris, I was there every night when we were in Paris. And so became good friends with the bartender, of course. And last night there was like, surprised me with the flight. And so he does a whole flight and puts an extra one on the end. He's like, start with this one. And it was a Spice Tree or a Compass Box, like ultra limited, shouldn't have been in a flight ever whiskey. So yeah, I haven't had any of the Rabbit Hole upper tier bottles, Dev. So I can't say that for sure. Their standard Rabbit Hole's a nice bottle. Imagine how easily the Irish whiskey goes down. I found that the Old Forester Straight Kentucky Rye to you has one overwhelming note that you lack the ability to describe. Any budget you would describe as going down easy. So that note that you're probably getting on the rye is from the rye, I would say, Knight. And it is probably an herbal note of some sort. For me, it's dill, like dill pickle, dill, like fresh dill, which I enjoy, or it's bubblegum. Both of those from rye whiskeys for whatever reason. But I think the Elijah Craig goes down smooth. I would still consider that a budget bottle. The Evan Williams bottle and bond, absolutely. Larceny as well is a really good wheated bourbon. So it's sweeter. And it's a really good bottle and goes down pretty nice for me. But there are also nice budget Irish blends that I've heard people really like. I haven't explored Irish all that much, personally.
Honestly, I find Irish is normally pretty smooth anyway. It seems to be a characteristic of it. But Jameson's is Irish, right? Jameson's isn't bad.
I was surprised at okay.
I think they do some fairly expensive bottles now. But yeah, that's not bad. But typically, to me, it's blends. Like the more blended something is, the easier it will go down. Whereas if you go for a single, it's going to be more of a sipper than it is a drinker.
Yeah. Hey, LP. Yeah, it depends on what you're looking for too. Blended Scotch can go down very nicely. Especially if you're coming from the American whiskey world, I think going to a Scotch gives you more familiarity because you still have the grain spirit in there, in addition to the single malt in the blend. So you still have some notes that you recognize from being, that grain whiskey. And how that feels and reacts. But yeah. Any other whiskey questions before we move on to whatever we're doing next, which we have no idea what it is? But I think, just thinking over, okay, I'm just going to grab something that'll be, just grabbing something cheap to take somewhere or something like that. The Bulleit whiskeys are definitely still on the list for me. That tasted like Granny Smith. That sip. That was crazy. Knob Creek, the Old Forester rye, 100 rye, or the 100 bourbon. That may be another one to try too, Knight, is just the Old Forester 100 proof bourbon. What is my ideal mash bill? Scotch, a single malt, so 100% malted barley. I do enjoy peat, so that's fine with me. American whiskey, I think I'm starting to prefer ryes over bourbons. So I do enjoy the high rye and no corn. So the 95 rye barley. So the high ryes like that are kind of what I'm enjoying right now. You enjoyed the Bulleit rye, didn't you, Kate?
Is that the one I liked?
I think so. Or did you like the Basil Hayden more?
No, I like the Bulleit. The Bulleit was much nicer than the Basil Hayden for me. Yes.
Yeah.
The Basil Hayden, I think, was the one that I think just tasted of ethanol. if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and that's an 8-year-old whiskey. 8-year-old whiskey.
It was after a few sips, you could definitely start to taste more. But yeah, like again, I think that was like my first introduction to like a proper bourbon like that. And it was just getting used to the overpowering taste of the ingredients that are used. Whereas, obviously, I'm just used to Scotch. I'm used to kind of what a Scotch tastes like, and then you can taste the extras.
Right.
But yeah. My go-to starts with a B, but I can't honestly remember what it's called right now.
Balvenie?
No. It's a nice blend. It's about 20, 25 quid a bottle. Hey,
Nerdy.
I mean, there's a possibility I have some. Am I wearing trousers? I think so. All right, give me a sec.
Yep. He is, in fact, wearing trousers. Because I like that flavor, yes. More like pantaloons. You've been accused of wearing pantaloons. Valentine's. It was right there and I couldn't pull it.
This is my kind of go-to. It's just a nice blended whiskey. Goes down incredibly well, which is why I get through so much of
it. Which is a good thing that it was only 20 pounds.
Oh, dear. Yeah, I'm wearing my dueling pantaloons. What's your problem? I got my glove as well, Podman.
Oh, my. Oh, my. Let's see. I think that's it. I think that's all I have, whiskey-wise. Is that all I have, whiskey-wise? Yeah, I think so. Well, thank you everyone for joining for this live stream of Whiskey with Rye. We are going to continue on to something else, I think, probably. Thank you, Kate, for joining. Do you want to plug your stuff at all?
No.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay. It'll probably be in the description. Not gonna lie, if I remember. Yeah. So until next time, cheers.